Welcome back to Points of Change. And this is the show all about life transformations and finding those points in life where you turn things around and the tools and resources that can help you to do that, often by speaking to the experts, the professionals who are helping people to turn their lives around in specific ways, and very often because they've done it themselves and it's areas that they care about. So my guest today is an expert at helping people to get unstuck. His name is Anthony Santillanes, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing what he has to say about getting unstuck and how to figure out how you can always know the next step to take. We'll be talking to Anthony right after the titles. Stay with us. So official welcome to Anthony Santillanes. It's great to be talking to you. Thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be here, John. Thank you so much for having me.
And where in the world are you joining us from? I know you told me you were traveling at the moment. So where are you right now?
So currently, so I'm in the United States. I'm in Oklahoma. So my wife, 4 kids, and our dog Dakota, we're traveling all 48 contiguous U.S. states this year. So we start in January. We get back to Texas October 29th. So that's the plan.
Fantastic. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun and a great experience for all of you. So I wish you the best of journeys all the way around there. As we've got you here today to talk about getting unstuck. Tell us exactly what you do or who you're helping to get unstuck.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, my audience is typically, young leaders, not young in terms of age, but young in terms of experience. Those leaders who, they've done all the right things. They've got, you could look at their life and they've got the good grades. They went to the right school. They've done all the right things, but they still want more, right? It's like there's still something, there's got to be more than just that checklist of things to do. And especially in the world of leadership, you get promoted, you become that leader in your first role, and you go, okay, I've arrived, but then you realize that that's where the real work starts, and that's where I'm at right now, John.
It's very interesting for me. In a lot of my coaching experience over the years, many of the people who I work with end up finding themselves in situations where they've risen up or they end up being in a top position somewhere, but have never really been given the tools or the know-how to be able to lead. So is that primarily where you can come in and help them move forward?
Absolutely. Yeah. The way you framed it is perfect, John. I was fortunate. I went to a military college, and then was in the military. So, between the two, I spent almost 13 years kind of in a military lifestyle. And for me, what I found was, I think I took for granted that it's just part of the curriculum. It's part of the education that you get those leadership principles and tools. But then when I got out of the military, I realized that, not everybody gets that. Not everybody gets that opportunity. It's whatever you just happen to get from your last supervisor or boss. And you go, okay, well, that must be what leadership is, And so hopefully they were good, but more often than not, you find, like you said, they didn't have the tools to really be effective, or as effective as they could be.
Yeah. So that can be the some of the cause of this. What are the things that people most often tend to get wrong when they find themselves in new leadership positions?
The biggest thing is that they think it's about them, right? That as a leader, I've worked with a lot of leaders where they say, well, I don't think they respect me enough. I don't think that they're going to listen to me. I don't think that they're hearing me, that they understand what I want. And in all of that kind of language, it's all about them, right? It's all about, how they're perceived, whether or not, again, they're respected, status, all those kinds of things. And that's the biggest thing. I think for the first thing as a leader, if you want to be really effective, you've got to, people talk about the servant, leader mindset. But when I think about it, it's, what are you doing as a leader every day to promote the success of those people that are supposed to be following you? Because if you're doing that, you don't have to worry about those other things. They will happen.
Yeah. So it's taking that stance of the leader as servant, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Which I think is all too often missing in the world in general. Who in your mind would be a good example of that?
So for me, so I'm on the John Maxwell team. I'm a coach, speaker, and trainer on the John Maxwell team. And So of course, for me, the first person I think of is John Maxwell. He's someone who, if you ever had the chance, John, to go to one of his events, whether virtual or live, he's so committed to the audience, and he's so committed to the people that are coming to see what he's doing, to use his products and services and things. It's not about him at all. Even when he does really well, even when he gets a standing ovation, he always gives credit to to higher powers. He says, they're not clapping for me, they're clapping for you. Right. And so for me, that for me is like that's the best example I can think of when I think of someone who really lives that servant leadership style.
Yeah, I know. I enjoy very much reading and studying Stoic philosophy, and I think in my mind, although we have no real idea of what it would have looked like or even what he would have sounded like in person, Marcus Aurelius is probably one of the greatest historical examples to my mind of the sort of the servant leader, the people who his sense of duty and responsibility to being able to help the people who he was responsible for and the people he was leading is, to me, an inspiration of leadership that we sadly don't see nearly as much. I mean, is there anyone in the sort of world of sort of maybe more corporate business who you see perhaps at least living up to some of that?
I would, if I had to think of someone like, and you think of corporate, so I follow and listen to a lot of what Bill Gates talks about as well. So, if I look at what Bill Gates, what him and, his wife, Melinda Gates, in the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, that's an example where I think, in terms of someone who had a lot of corporate responsibility, corporate leadership, right, with Microsoft, and then really has, I think, kind of grown beyond just making, profits and making good products. What him and his wife, Melinda, do is really focus on how do we serve the planet? How do we serve human beings? All life, if you will. So if I think of a corporate example, he's probably one of the closer ones.
Yeah. So when it actually comes to moving forward with positive and powerful leadership, you talk about getting people unstuck. If you were working with somebody and say, okay, I've just got this new leadership position, I feel out of my depth, I don't really know what to do, where do you start?
So the first thing I want to get a handle on is, what is it that they want, right? What's your desired outcome? Because for me, and it's got to be a really well-defined, specified outcome. It can't be, well, I just want to be happier. I want to be more satisfied. I want to feel like I'm doing good work. Because you can be doing great, amazing things and still not feel that way, right? So I'm not really looking for a feeling. I'm looking, what is the outcome? What is it you want to achieve? And then kind of knowing that gives me an idea of sort of where their focus is. Because then from there I can go, okay, how much time are we committing to this? Where are you at today relative to that? If you're, for example, I've worked with leaders where, I had a leader, for example, and she led a team, and what they did was that their team was responsible for what we call alerts and a piece of software where basically what it did is it was for the trucking industry, and it let them know where, say, road closures were, right? So it was really important work that you had to be really good at, because if you were wrong, you could potentially let a truck drive through an area that was unsafe, right? So, kind of I don't know that you'd call it high stress, but definitely some high consequences if we do it wrong. Yeah. And so really with her, I remember working with her, and she said, for me, what I really want is I want my team to come in, feel confident in what they do, right? Feel good about what they do. And then, but more than that, like just have a certain level of self-respect for themselves and the work they're doing, right? That they're not just a cog in the machine, right? And that they're replaceable. And, we can, hey, she wanted to get away from that idea or that mindset. And not that they all had that, but some did. And, so that was something like, okay, got it. Okay. Now, then we could go back and say, okay, now how do they feel today? Right? Where are we at today relative to how many people feel like this? Why do they feel like this? Where does that stem from? And then from there, I prefer coaching that's is more inquiry based, right? I'm a believer that, I'm not there to fix anyone. She wasn't broken. She didn't need me to come in and, put her back together or anything like that. And I'm a firm believer in the subconscious, and that, she knows what the answer is. I've just got to help her find it, is all.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think, to my mind, coaching is much, if coaching isn't empowering the person being coached, If it's all about what the coach knows and what the coach tells you to do, it's not really coaching at all. It's you're being handheld, and you can maybe make a case for mentoring in that sense, but realistically, even good mentoring should be empowering people to move things forward, and say trusting that people do generally know what to do, and often just don't trust their intuition on things when they perhaps should. Second guess themselves, overthink things, all these things that get people stuck, which is why we're here. Okay, so where would you go to next? I mean, where would you move on to help people get really unstuck, and what sort of other areas perhaps do they find commonly people getting stuck in?
For me, the biggest thing, and this is something that I apply personally. So for me, like the biggest thing is taking action. What I find when people get stuck is, it may be that they haven't really defined what they want to do. In some cases they have, but then they're still just kind of idling, right? They're still just kind of spinning through the motions, trying to do more research, trying to, well, if I just knew more, if I just had, more time, more money, more whatever that is. And so what I like to do then is understand what are those barriers, what's sort of keeping them from taking action. And then really the next step is, even if we haven't quite deep dove and really hammered out all those details, my next biggest thing is let's take some action. Let's take some movement, right? Maybe we don't understand exactly why this is so hard, or why we feel this lack of confidence, but we can at least take action and move forward. Because one of the things that I find personally is, anytime that I personally get stuck, the first thing I want to do is take action on something, right? Usually I think people get stuck is because there's a certain amount of, there's an amount of uncertainty, right? Where they're just not sure what's going to happen. They're not sure what people are going to think, right? For whatever reason. And one of the ways that you can build certainty is just by taking action, right? Whether that's, for me, a lot of times that has to deal with my health. So for me, that may be going for a run, going for a walk, lifting weights. Even if I wasn't supposed to do that right now, for me, if I'm just feeling really stuck and I need to get out of that mindset and sort of break that, I'll just go be physically active. And every time I come back, I'm always ready to go. So the next thing I'll always do is, even if we haven't quite figured that out, let's come up with a series of things that person feels, pretty strong that they can achieve, that they can accomplish over the next week, next few days, next 24 hours, depending on how urgent this action is needed. And then let's do that, right? That way we feel, for me, the biggest thing is they've got to be okay with taking movement, even when they're not sure of exactly what to do, right? Because that's the biggest thing I think gets people stuck is, like you said, there's some uncertainty there. They're just not sure.
It's a few things come up for me whilst you're saying this as well, in terms of like, a lot of the time, I think it's sometimes perfectionism that's stopping people from taking action in the first place and being able to move anything forward, because it's like, well, having that uncertainty, what's the right thing to do, and feeling that often people don't give themselves room for making the errors, or for being willing to perhaps be wrong, or look a bit foolish, or like maybe not look like the expert or the omnipotent leader that they perhaps feel that they should look like.
Yeah.
Do you feel that? I mean, is that something you encounter when you're working with people as well?
I do, and I'll be honest. I struggled with that myself for a bit. So one of the things that I do, and I borrowed this from John Maxwell. I have a word of the year every year now. So this is something I started probably a few years ago. But one of the things, like for me personally, if I go back to 2019, there were several moments where I was really indecisive, where I was in that spot of, I need more information. I need to do more research. And then ultimately, not that it was extremely costly, but that there were certain decisions that I delayed 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks even. And the outcome was no different than had I made the same decision 6 weeks before. Like it didn't matter to do that. And so one of my words, my word for 2020 was actually action, was that, to overcome that, even when, I don't have all the information. I don't have everything that needs to happen. And of course, it was really ironic that 2020 was my year for action. But, but that's what it was, And so, But absolutely, yeah. Yeah. If you ever have that, for anyone that's listening, if you feel like it's got to be perfect, yeah. For one, it won't be. And then, and if, yeah, it just won't be. I'll just be frank with you. It just won't be.
Yeah, I mean, just very recently, in fact, just before we were recording this, I was speaking with a very knowledgeable gentleman called Eric Twiggs about procrastination, and we were talking about getting into action taking and this whole thing of well, if you're focused on things being perfect, and this is sort of something my marketing coach says all the time as well. Done is better than perfect every single time, because it becomes perfectionism actually becomes a tool for procrastination, a means of procrastination and putting things off, because it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be good enough. You have to get into the perfecting rather than perfection mindset, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So cool. Okay, great. And another thing I thought about this is I forget exactly where it comes from, because I listen to a lot of audiobooks, so I know it's from one of my recent listens, but it was some study into the idea of, because you talked about running and going out, that if you go for a walk, or you need a conversation or a discussion to move forward, to actually take someone for a walk with you, like coaching someone and they feel really stuck, take them for a walk. The whole thing of facing and moving in a direction is psychologically triggering this idea of moving forward and getting things moving. So I think that's a fascinating idea. It's a strategy that has been used by certain politicians as well in the past to help move forward stuck negotiations and things like that, to go and have a walk. I think one of the ones that was talked about in terms of using this was Reagan and Gorbachev. And but yeah, it was a strategy to sort of get out of gridlocked conversations and to at least have that sensation of moving forward. So, going for a run or a walk could be the perfect thing to do to help you get and feel a bit unstuck, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's one of those things too that I think we take for granted that the way our systems work in our body. So my undergrad degree is actually in health and wellness, and so so I've got to study the body and how it works, and vitamins and diet and exercise and how all those things play into it. But I think one of the things that people don't take for granted, or they take for granted, is that that you can achieve what you want to, that your brain functions at a certain level, that your ideas develop at a certain level, and that there's sort of this constant. And I think we fail to appreciate that. What really gets the brain going is that physical activity. It's like you said, and I like that. I'm not sure. I haven't read that one yet or listened to that one yet, John. But I definitely like that idea of actually physically moving your body in a direction as a psychological tool to trigger your mind to move forward. I like that.
Well, I've actually come across some coaches, mainly in the UK, who do this as a coaching style. Actually, take a walk, and there's one guy who does regular videos of walking and invites people to go and join him on his walks as well. Perhaps a bit less so with COVID restrictions and things, but yeah, as a tool for just even having that feeling of you're moving and things are happening, you are taking action whilst you're having the conversation, even if it's not direct action on the thing you may be thinking or talking about. But yeah, I think it's potentially a great strategy. I'll have to check out where it came from and where I got that from and let you know. But I know it's one of my recent listens. So when people are coming into leadership and they feel a bit overwhelmed and they feel a bit stuck, they can start getting into action. But you talk as well about getting into the right kind of action, like knowing what the next step is to take, and how to always know what that's going to be for you. How do you do that? And is it just from doing something, or can you actually start to be a bit more calculated about taking the right kinds of action?
Absolutely. Yeah, you definitely want to be, so initially, I want people just to take action, right? Just get used to being comfortable. But there's and that actually comes from the 7 habits of the highly successful, or of highly successful people, where we talk about sort of the 4 quadrants of task, right? Where, if we think about task as either important or not important, urgent or not urgent, we can create a quad chart, right, of task. And what I always encourage people to do is what we call those sort of important, not urgent tasks. And what that means is those tasks that are really preventative in nature, but aren't necessarily due today, right? Again, just coming back to health is always an easy example. Money is also a great example of this, right? And actually, we'll talk money. People like talking about money, right? So
Yeah.
if you think about your money, for example, if you're a 20-something, 30-something, 40-something, maybe even 50-something, right? You don't necessarily need to save for retirement right now, right? So we would call that an important, not urgent, right? Where it is important that we prepare for retirement, but we don't necessarily have to do it right this moment, right? If I went a year, 2 years, 3 years without investing or saving or doing anything like that to build my wealth or whatever that vehicle is for retirement, I'd probably be fine. I would live, right? But by the time I hit 65, 66, 67, now suddenly this is an important, urgent task, right? It's always been important, but now there's a time piece to it right now. But the problem is that it's kind of too late, right? So what I always wanted to do, people, once I get done with trying to get momentum, get movement going, I then want to look at their schedule and go, okay, now of your schedule, how much of your time you're committing to this? When are you committing to it? And are we committing time to firefighting, or are we committing our time to, again, build that and take those actions that prevent fires in the future? Because you're always going to have those. You're always going to have the things that happen that you weren't expecting, you didn't see coming. But for the most part, that shouldn't be all of your day. Your whole day shouldn't be firefighting. The bulk of your day should be committed to those things that are a little bit more deliberate, a little bit more intentional in order to get you to those goals and objectives.
Okay. What would you say to someone who's more like me, who has a habit of taking on too many things and trying to achieve too much to all at once?
So that's where, John, I think if anyone that's listening to this show is probably in that boat. I think for this is a show that I think really caters to those high achievers, those overachievers, right? And so I think for most people that listen, they're going, "Ooh, yes, like this is me too." When I think of that, what I want to come back to is what is that driving force, right? That we feel compelled to do that. Tony Robbins actually has a really interesting exercise. I don't know if you've ever been to like his UPW event or even like his Leadership Academy. He does this, and he'll ask 3 questions where he'll ask you first off, and not to get too deep into our childhood memories, but he'll ask you, of your parents or whoever raised you, right? So whether your birth parents, adopted, grandparents, whoever it is that raised you, whose love did you seek out the most is the first question he'll ask. And for me, I'd say that's my mom. And then he'll say, well, who's, and not necessarily that because you didn't get it, but because that may have been the parent that was around the most, whatever that was, right? Just whoever it was. And then the next question he asks is, who did you have to be to get their love? Right. And for my mom, for a good bit of my youth, my mom was a single mom. I have 3 younger brothers. So, there was a point where, there's 3 or 4 of us in the house. We also had cousins that lived with us at various points in time. Right. So here she is, a single mom trying to feed 5, 6 people, especially teenage boys. Right. That can be a lot. So there were these periods where in order to do that, my mom had to work a lot. Right. She worked a lot. She worked weekends. And so really the weekend, even the time that she was home, it was like she was always busy. So not that, if we needed something that was urgent, she was always there for us. But there was a lot of time where it was like, we've got to be really self-reliant. We've got to be really independent, be able to take care of ourselves, right? And she also didn't accept average. I was fortunate. At the time, I didn't realize this. I remember in 7th grade was the first year I actually had to pick classes as a student. And I actually picked all of like the normal classes. I was like, I don't want to do any advanced stuff. I just want to just put me in the average middle ground. And my mom literally went back, erased all my requests, and put me in all advanced courses. I was not allowed to take a regular course. And then when I took those courses, I was not allowed to get a C, right? It was A's and B's, so you had to be an achiever in our house. My brother, he played football. My brother Dave, he's my closest in terms of age. He's the one closest to me. They were state champions, right? So again, like we didn't do things. We couldn't be average in our house, and so. But then what Tony Robbins then will ask you is, who are you not allowed to be, right? In order to get that love. So who did you love the most? Who did you have to be? Who are you not allowed to be, right? So for us, we weren't allowed to be needy. We weren't allowed to, not have a solution to a problem. Like we weren't allowed to quit. There were so many, we weren't allowed to do those things. And so what I realized as an adult going through that exercise was there were a lot of times where, like for me, for example, it's hard, even now, it's still hard for me to ask for help, right? Because it has been so ingrained to me to be independent, to be self-reliant, to have the solutions. It can be a challenge for me, right? So, and not in your case, John, not that I'd want to go back and, understand your relationship with your, with who raised you, but I would come back and go, okay, why do you feel this? Why do you feel so compelled to achieve all these things, right? Arguably you've achieved success, right? What is it you're looking for that you expect from these things that you don't currently have or that you don't believe you have, right? And then if by the end of that conversation we get to a point where we say, okay, even after all that, even after going through that, we still think we need to achieve that. That's where, again, we come back to blocking out time, scheduling time for these things. And then really, not reducing or minimizing what it is that we want to get out of it, but getting a realistic view of, okay, how much time do we need to do this? Can we achieve this in the time we propose, or do we want to try to achieve something else?
Yeah. Well, one of the, I don't know if I told you this when we spoke before, but one of the things that I've been doing over the last 10 years or so has been working with Harv Eker. If you know, Harv is the Secrets of the Millionaire Mind guy. And so I've been doing coaching and training for them. And in those early days when Harv was still doing a lot more live events and stuff, he's pretty much semi-retired now and moving to Hawaii. But in those times, I can remember hearing Harv say time and time again, you can have everything you want, but you can't have it all at once. And I think I probably had to hear that message multiple times before it really sunk in and say, all right, yeah, not all at once. Let's just get focused on what he calls your big rocks, the most important stuff. And some of the other things you can actually let go a bit. That was the realization for me that allowed me to sort of start rocketing forward with things and starting to see some real results. Not that I had no results before, but it just changed everything when I was like, okay, don't necessarily have to have like only one laser focus on one thing, but if I cut the noise out and drop a few things, or at least say, maybe come back to that a bit later, I actually have a lot more potential to move forward much more powerfully with the most important things that I'm working on right now. Yeah, that's been my general experience since then as well. But I love this. I think it's really important to get people unstuck in these sorts of areas. Who typically comes to you then, and at what point do they usually come to you?
So it's it's again, coming back to that young leadership group. I'll be honest, John, I wouldn't call it executive coaching. I've advised business owners and executive level leadership on things. But I don't think it fits into coaching. I wouldn't call it that. They're going, hey, what do you think I should do about this? And I say, well, here's my opinion on it. And they go, okay, yes or no, we're going to do that. So I don't call that coaching. Those that come to me and say, hey, look, here's the problem I have. Can we meet every week for an hour just so I can, so we can determine next steps and can you just give me a process so that we can go through this? That group, again, that's those young leaders. That's the ones that most likely have either been, they're new to their leadership role or they're new to some leadership problem. I've been fortunate that, and again, not that I try to tell them what to do, but I've been fortunate, I got to lead soldiers in Iraq on 2 deployments. So I've got to see leadership to that level. And then I've also been in, I've been in office environments, pre-COVID, where, predominantly, everyone in that office has been in that office for 10, 12, 15 years. They've never worked outside that environment. Or if they have, it was in a similar role, right? So very different sets of problems. Those are 2 very different sets of problems and challenges. So with that though, I get the opportunity to, someone comes in, they say, I've never experienced this before. It's likely I've experienced it and I feel confident to be able to talk to that. And also I think that what works for me is that I've always, I've been leading teams since I was about 18 years old. So, for me, and I don't say that's a brag, I just say to make the point that like, I know what it feels like to run into that problem for the first time. And I know what I wish somebody would have said to me then. So that's really that group that I really do best with.
Yeah, great. How much of an issue do you tend to find something like perhaps imposter syndrome? So I'm thinking that must be kind of a big issue for people who find themselves in new leadership positions.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's again, anytime I hear someone say something like, "Well, I don't think they respect me. I don't think that they trust me. I don't think they believe me." Or in the case where, like, especially when it's like disciplinary action, that's probably one area where I see it, where someone says, "Well, I just started, I just got in this role," or whatever that might be, and and it's almost like, if they had been there longer, or if they had a reputation for doing it, then they'd be in a better position to whatever that action might be to take, right? And so again, when I think about that, though, what I like to just remind people is, at some point, like, in order to get past that, you have to take action, until it becomes second nature. It's like, you think about like a child walking, right? When a child learns to walk, they don't go, well, I shouldn't do this. I've never done this before. I'm not the best person. If they did, right, or if we told them that as adults, right, we'd all be crawling around still, right? So same thing when we get to that point when someone comes to me and with that kind of language, it's okay. What can we do? What's the smallest thing that we can do today that we can sort of make progress on that to get over that?
Yeah, I was thinking that if you were in not you specifically, but no, it's just in general. If someone's in a plane crash and everyone survives, but you're in the middle of nowhere, and somebody says, "All right, let's go this way. We're going to do this. We're going to do this." But someone else who may be even an expert in some area saying, "Well, we could do this, but if we do this, it's like going to be like this, or we're not really sure, and maybe go this way." People are going to follow the person who's confident, even if they haven't got a clue what they're really doing, because it's such an important element. So confidence plays such a big part there, right? I think I've seen this. We talked about all the issues with COVID and stuff. I think that's been a big part of it as well for so many people. That even with all these issues, it's the confident voices, the people are saying, "Okay, all this is going on, but here's what we're going to do," that people are needing and reaching out for. And in business environments as well, that's what they want. They don't want someone who's going to and and second guess themselves and be like, "Well, I don't want to annoy anybody here," but it's like, that's not what anyone wants. A bit of assertiveness, a bit of confidence. Just say, "Okay, it might not be the right decision. You don't need to tell them that, but this is what we're going to do. This is how I see it, and this is the plan of action I've made." Is still going to be far more productive than any kind of vacillating on a direction or some activity.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And that's great. You bring that up, John. Yeah. It's, if you can just, I'll give you just an example of, I'll give you two examples, good and bad. We had, so in the last organization I was with, where I was the operations manager there, we had brought in an investing group. But at the time, we didn't have like a 401k plan, but we wanted to at least provide opportunities for employees to get educated on investing, those kinds of things. There's a 401k plan now, but at the time there wasn't. So we bring this group in, and I remember they came in, and it was one of the worst presentations I've ever seen. They brought in equipment that didn't quite work like it was supposed to. You could tell they didn't really know the presentation. You kind of, it was sort of like a canned presentation that just everyone got. It wasn't created by them. You could tell because they're like looking at the slide. They didn't really know what was going on. Or they would skip back and forth between slides. Like it was just awful. By the end of it, not a single person invested with them. So we had about 100 employees at the time. Not one person said, "Hey, can I get their phone number?" Like not one person asked for their information. And to your point, it's that, I think it was that lack of confidence. Because we didn't get that confidence from them, we're not going to give our money to them, right? We're definitely not, if you're not confident about just a presentation, maybe you really are great at investing. I don't know. But if I can't even get a presentation out of you, no, you're not getting my money either. On the flip side of that, we did they're actually, the company I was with, ProMile Software, they're actually doing this right now. They're implementing Salesforce, right? It's CRM software. And, it was one of those things where, when we came on and we did our first demos with them, and even though this is going to cost, several $1,000s, it was a very clear, they were so confident in how they presented it. And there was a customized solution for us. it was like a no-brainer. It was, well, of course we're going to buy this product, right? So I think, to your point, in leadership it works. It also works really well in sales, but definitely, no one wants to follow a leader that has doubt or is like, that's the word. Like, just pretend. If nothing else, just pretend, and people will go, okay, yeah, I'm right behind you. I got you.
Yeah, it's amazing how much of a difference it makes in situations. Like, if it's not already a simple choice and decision, there is the person and the level of confidence you can have in the person behind it is going to be one of the deciding factors very often in many situations. Is that people say people buy or people invest in other people buy people rather than products. So, well, maybe not 100% true, but I think there's a lot of truth in it, and people do want to know who they are. Like, you have watched anything like the Shark Tank, right? In the UK, it's called Dragon's Den. That level of confidence, that sort of leadership quality of knowing what you're doing, but also being able to back it up. I mean, it's not we're not talking about sort of the used car salesman who's just trying to get you to buy and right, using some sleazy sales tactics to do that, but actually having the knowledge and the experience and the activity and the energy into what you're doing to know what you're talking about. That's the stuff that gives you confidence as well, right? I mean, confidence is ultimately about having a level of predictability in an outcome. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And the one thing too that, the only, we can't control other people, but we can control ourselves, right? If there's any mindset that you have control over, anyone you have influence over more than anyone else, it's yourself, right? So that's the best way to build confidence is like you said, if you can kind of predict what those results are going to be through consistency, that's the way to go.
What then, maybe some of this is recapping, but what then are the key guiding principles for you in helping people get unstuck?
So number one is, and this is something that I do every day. So I meditate in the mornings. This is something that I've started doing recently. It's not, I'm not, I haven't been doing this forever by any means, but something I started doing recently. And one of the things that I do at the end of my meditation is I always kind of speak out to the universe, if you will. Some people would, they would call it, prayer or something like that. But, the way I see it, I kind of just speak out and say, to whoever it is that I need to serve most today, may I cross paths with them and serve from a place of love. Right. And for me, what that means is, one of my principles is that as long as I continue to make it about you, and as long as I continue to see you as having infinite potential, to seeing you as complete and whole and me, I'm not there to repair you or fix you, then I will treat you as such, right? If I see you as broken, damaged, if I don't see you as a 10, I see you as like a 5, then I'm going to treat you that way. And unfortunately, that doesn't serve you for me to do that. So for me, the number one principle is to see people that way, right? See them as infinite potential, come from a place of love, not come from a place of judgment or a place of, again, sort of my own soapbox, if you will. And then the second thing I would say is always, and you hear this a lot, kind of this idea of over delivering, but for me, what that means is someone tells me, I want A, B, and C. And for me, that's the minimum expectation. Remember, a mom, she didn't let me be average, right? She didn't let me do minimum. So for me, that's the minimum. When someone says, this is what I want, I say, okay, that's where we're going to start from. Right now, what are the next 3, 4, 5, 10 things that I can do to really take that to the next level? So service and over deliver.
Yeah. So I love that. That kind of comes back to what we started off talking about, the leadership as service kind of principles as well. And so what you described there is how you put yourself in that feeling and mindset and energy of the service through leadership. So that fits in very nicely. Perfect. What then I want to know from you is what brought you to this? What was what's the reason you're passionate about helping people get unstuck? Was this like from something in your own experience, or has it just been something that you've ended up helping people with and realized, hey, I can actually help people get some real results here?
It was one of those things. My uncle said this one time. He said when he describes how things happen, he says it happened both ways, over time and all at once, right? So for me, it was one of those things where, if I look at sort of throughout my career, I had the opportunity to again, just do some really cool, exciting things that a lot of people don't get to do. I got to be in environments that people don't typically get to operate in. I got to lead people in ways that a lot of people don't get to. And what I realized, actually, just you know, I know I sound like a John Maxwell cheerleader. I kind of am, but you know, one of his books that really affected me was The 5 Levels of Leadership. And I read that book in 2018, and it was one of his books where, you know, I was a leader. I was really good at getting results. And in John's book, that's like level 3. So just kind of a quick, in a nutshell, level 1 is leading based off title and authority, right? You lead because you're the boss. Level 2 is you lead because of what you've done for people. So people respect you because you give them accolades, you give them rewards. Level 3 is people follow you because you get results, right? You get things done. And I was really good at level 3. I got all the way up to level 3, and you've got to go through all 5. And I was really good at level 3, but I read that book, and level 4 is all about leaders developing other leaders who then go on to develop other leaders, right? And for me, that's where I'm at now, is level 4. And I realized that because, you know, there were some situations when I reflected, you know, through a lot of reflection, where there were people where we got really good results, and then I left, and then their results just kind of petered out, right? They just didn't quite, you know, people go, hey, you know, can you help them out? Can you coach them? Can you do something? And what I realized was I didn't actually set that person up for success, right? I was probably telling them what to do, not teaching them how to think, right? How to think effectively. And so in kind of realizing that was far more painful than not getting results. Like for me, the most painful thing was we get results, and then, you know, I move out of the picture and those results fall off, right? That for me, that was a leadership failure on my part. And so that's where I got to where I'm at today, where for me, the most enriching things that, you know, when I reflect on my experiences, the best experiences I've had, regardless of industry, regardless of job title, pay, regardless of any of that kind of stuff, for me, the most, I guess, rewarding things for me were those moments whenever, you know, I'm working with a leader, and then, you know, weeks go by, months go by, years go by, and now they're working with other leaders, right? And helping prepare them for their next step and helping them get unstuck. That for me, so yeah, so all at once and slowly over time is sort of how I got into this.
Sure. What has been one of your favorite results that you've supported someone in achieving?
So, you know, I had the opportunity to lead. So I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt. So basically I'm trained in how to improve processes following a very methodical approach. And I got to lead my first wave of what we call green belt. So it's a little bit less training than a black belt gets. But I actually got to lead a wave and get them to a point of certification. So for me, the cool thing about that was there were a couple of folks that did really well, and to see them take what they learned and then apply that in the business, where they had a confidence about themselves, like to see them go from, like, you know, these are people that have been in the organization, whether they've been there for 10 years or 6 months, right? But to see them have just feel empowered to make decisions, to lead projects, to lead process improvement, right? Where everyone wins, right? The organization wins because they get a much more effective process and a much more effective leader. But then that individual wins. The teams that they were leading won. Like there was just there was so much winning going on. Like it was hard not to just really appreciate that. That for me, I would say, has probably been the most rewarding, because those leaders today are still leading, right? And they're doing the things. They're not doing the exact same way. They've definitely modified them, and I give them credit because they've improved it even from what I taught them. But they've taken those things and they're still applying them today to continue to improve what they do, and that for me is probably the most rewarding thing.
Yeah, very much. It's like the leadership wisdom of the Chinese proverb of the old man planting a tree, knowing that he'll never get to sit in its shade, but planting it for the future generations. It's like, not calling you an old man, but it's saying you get to plant these seeds, and it rolls on to other people, to the leaders you work with directly, but to all the people that they then go on to positively impact. It rolls out from there, and that's where we create waves of change, not just points of change, but whole waves rippling out as well, which is wonderful. So you've written a whole book about this as well, and tell us a bit about the book so people can go and check it out.
So in the book, basically what it is, again, this is for that person who, if we think about it, when we grow up, all the way up to depending on where you're at, where your education system, begins and ends and things. We have this really structured sort of way as a child and as a youth when we're coming up, where there's like, hey, you got to get grades in school. You've got to listen to your parents, right? You've got to be home at the right time. But then, once you graduate high school, or again, whatever that is for you, primary school, then comes college or university. And it's sort of like, and you do all the right things, you get to the right college, you get to the right university. Again, maybe you get good grades, you do those things, you graduate, and now you've sort of like, you're in your career, right? And so I think something, when you're in your mid-20s, I think there's like this idea that, at least this is what I realized, was there's no more checklist, right? It's like, okay, you're an adult now, this is your life, right? This is for you to figure out. And there's no more checklist, right? So I think for some of us, we look and we say, okay, well, what do I do now, right? Am I supposed to just work for the next 40 years and then hopefully retire and then die 10 years after that, or whatever that timeline is? And I don't think that's it. I think life was meant for more than that. I think it was meant for, truly enjoying it, embracing the moments, having relationships that are rich with passion and energy. And so what my book does is sort of takes you through that. It takes you through each of the 8 areas of life, to really sort of walk you through it. And I don't tell you how to do it. What I do is offer questions. What I do is just tell you, this is sort of what you have, here's some ways to think about it. Here's what you were probably taught. But here's some questions to ask to get you to whatever that next step is. To again, tap in, questions that I would ask you in coaching. I'm going to try to get you kind of maybe coach yourself a little bit, and help you get yourself unstuck. And again, the questions are done in a way where, not that it's just a book of questions, but it's done in a way that no matter where you're at in life, no matter what age you are, you can ask these questions and they'll lead you to whatever that outcome is you're looking for.
That's great. I definitely want to check that out myself. I think it's important to ask ourselves good questions. We don't spend nearly enough time thinking about things as we could. One of their skills, and certainly I remember which book this came from, but it was Keith Cunningham's The Road Less Stupid, if you ever read it, which to me is one of my favorite books in terms of asking good questions, because it's all talking about take time to think. Like some of the best leaders in the world take time out of their schedule just to think about these kinds of questions that you're talking about, and to work on answering them, like coaching yourself for a bit, but giving yourself a bit of peace. And rather than just like do, always taking action, stop and think for a while as well. And that's where you maybe hopefully start to get into the right kinds of action and the clearer directions and the inspiration, taking some time out to think and recognizing that is really important. I think it's important to make some notes about what you're thinking about as well, then just lose it to the ether, but progress yourself forward. So great. I definitely want to check that out. There's always, to me, is one of the best things you can do is be asking yourself good questions, and if you encounter people like yourself who helping us to ask ourselves better questions, that's always going to be a bonus. So we sadly need to wrap things up today, but it's been very helpful and very useful to talk to you. If people do want to check out more about you and more about your book, where can they go?
So they can go to my website. It's theefficacious.com. That's where my business website is. You can also email me, anthony@theefficacious.com. Or, of course, the book's on Amazon, paperback or ebook. So those are probably the easiest ways to find me. I'm also on Facebook, LinkedIn as well. So a number of ways to find me. But yeah, email or my website is probably the best way.
The book is called Getting Unstuck. Is that right?
Right. Getting Unstuck, how to always know the next step for you.
Perfect. Great stuff. Anthony, thank you so much for your time and for joining us today on Points of Change. It's been wonderful speaking to you. I hope that people listening are going to go and check out your book and help get themselves unstuck, ask themselves great questions, or come and connect with you and maybe work a bit more directly with you to help get unstuck, especially if you are finding yourself in a new leadership position in your life. Anthony, thank you so much for your time today, for getting up early and coming and joining us from your travels. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Excellent. So we're going to wrap things up there for today, but do come and join us again for future shows. Keep an eye out for the Points of Change events coming up. You'll see notifications, especially if you're subscribed on YouTube, and see if we can get the YouTube little thing to pop up on the screen. So if you can come and follow us on YouTube, find Present Influence, all you need to do is click like, click subscribe, click the bell icon, and you will be notified of all upcoming shows, and you won't miss anything that's coming up. Make sure you're following me on Facebook, YouTube, and or Twitter or LinkedIn, wherever you can. You'll see the live shows coming out and the notifications, and find us, and make sure you subscribe to the show as well. That way you'll get to hear all of the audios, all the guests who are coming on, and check out the back catalogs as well. So let's wrap things up for today, and look out for episodes coming again very soon.